3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Boom. Now who's going to do it for me? Give me a sec. All right, I'm ready.
Good afternoon. Hello. How are y'all doing? This is a mic check.
Thank
Good.
you. Can you do it again, please?
Good afternoon. Hello. How y'all doing for the second time?
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Can you do it in Spanish?
Español. Okay. 1, 2, 3. ¿Cómo están? Estoy aquí en Gray. ¿Me puedes oír?
Muy bien.
Sí.
Everybody ready? Good. All right, well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you to our partners from the media for joining us this afternoon. For those of you I don't know, my name is Mike Sostruck. I am the Commissioner for the Department of Public Safety. I want to say thank you to the law enforcement leaders that are joining me up here today. Major Scott Gosselin from the Maine State Police, Chief Ryan McGee from Lisbon PD, certainly Colonel Bill Ross, Lieutenant Ethel Ross from Major Crimes. You are in her building here at the Gray Barracks. And the primary reason that we're here today is that we had a tragic loss of life in Sabattus, right on the Lisbon line. And when we have tragedies such as that, they certainly spill over into the public forum right there on Route 9 at 4:15-ish in the afternoon. It's something that we want to make sure that we come out and have an opportunity to discuss. And we want to do that because we know one piece that we can provide in a process that surrounds closure is to provide information. And what we know is that knowledge is power. And when we can provide some details, which we'll do this afternoon, that information helps people get rid of that unknown that's always in the back of our minds. And we know we have victims, we have survivors, families and friends, those that have lost their life yesterday in the town of Sabattus. And our hearts and souls go out to each and every one of them. Again, and it's important that we come out here to represent them and really also to send a message to the entire state of Maine that we care about you, we hear you, we see you. And when events like this happen anywhere in this state, it impacts every single one of us. So with that in mind, we're going to follow a little bit of a process here to kind of walk through a timeline. And that timeline is going to include Colonel Ross coming up and kind of walking through the major crimes response. And then we're going to turn it over to Chief McGee, who had first responders actually respond when this first came in. I will note that we're less than 24 hours into this. This occurred, again, about 23 hours ago. So there are guaranteed to be questions that we can't answer at this point. I would also say that our friends and partners with the Androscoggin Sheriff's Office and for the Sabattus Police Department were invited to join us today, and they're just busy in other locations and could not join us. So we can't answer questions on their behalf. That's certainly not our intent. But as the primary entity that investigates homicides in this state, we certainly are prepared to kind of walk through some of those timelines. So with that in mind, again, I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to reach out to people we care about, residents from across the state. And what we're going to do from a process standpoint is Colonel Ross will go first, Chief McGee will go second. Please hold any questions that you may have till the end, and then we will come up and try to do the best we can to answer those for you. Okay? So thank you very much, Colonel Ross.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Commissioner. I want to point out that this was a multi-jurisdictional response to this. The Maine State Police came in shortly after the incident concluded with their major crimes unit to conduct the death investigations. I'm going to go through a timeline of what happened yesterday in as much detail as I can give you. And I'll give some time afterwards. You guys can ask me some questions. We get as much information out as possible. I also want to recognize the fantastic response by our partners, Lisbon Sabattus Police Departments, Androscoggin County Sheriff's Office, and the rescue workers that helped some of the victims that were there yesterday. They did a tremendous job. This was a very dynamic scene, something you don't see typically. And they did a great job in bringing it all together, preserving the crime scene so when our folks got there. I just want to take you back to yesterday, which was April 2nd. Sometime during the day, a man by the name of James Davis III, he's a 29-year-old. He lives at 143 Doobie Drive in Sabattus. He went over to his father's house. His father lives at 27 Birchwood Drive, also in the town of Sabattus. He brought over there and spent the majority of the day there with family members. His father resides at that residence and his grandmother as well. But he was there with other family members. And throughout the day, he started to act erratically. And he started to saying things that didn't make sense. He was also armed. He was armed with a sidearm, a .357 revolver. He was armed with an AK-47 rifle. And we believe he also had maybe one or two other firearms that he had brought over to that residence on Birchwood Drive. Throughout the day, family members were trying to get in touch with James Davis III's mother. She's kind of the primary caregiver to James, even though he's a 29-year-old male. They live together. And she seems to be the one that's able to calm him down when he has these types of issues. The father, James Davis II, arrived at the house on Birchwood, and they made arrangements to take James Davis III to see his mother. And they ended up meeting up on Birchwood Drive. James Davis III got into the vehicle with his mother, Christine Smith. Christine Smith is a 47-year-old. She lives with James at 143 Doobie Drive in Sabattus. And they continued to drive in the car, making their way to the intersection of King Street, where it bisects with Route 9, which is right at the Lisbon-Sabattus town line. At that point in time, we believe James Davis III used the .357 revolver and shot his mother, causing the vehicle to cross the roadway and end up on someone's front lawn. First responders found Christine Smith deceased behind the wheel of that vehicle after their response a couple moments later. James Davis III exited that vehicle, and he had the AK-47 style rifle in his hand, and he pointed it down the roadway to oncoming traffic that was traveling from Lisbon into Sabattus on Route 9. He opened fire on several vehicles. He struck the occupant and operator of a vehicle, Catherine Williams, 53, also of Sabattus. She was just driving down the road in her SUV. Several bullet holes went through the vehicle, and she has no known association to James Davis III. She was struck, and the vehicle continued down Route 9, crashed into a house, and she was later found deceased from those gunshot wounds by first responders. Her autopsy is pending. James Davis III continued to fire that rifle at oncoming traffic. He struck another vehicle, another two vehicles, occupied by David Wilson, 35, of Hartford, who was driving his pickup down the road, and also a Tyson Turner, a 19-year-old of Jay, also driving a truck in that same direction on Route 9, Lisbon into Sabattus. Several vehicle strikes to the vehicles. Both individuals were hit and wounded. They were able to pull over, and those were the two individuals that were able to call 911, one of several people that did, and reported what had happened to them. Immediately after shooting those two individuals in their car, James Davis III, and we have a witness that had seen this, turned that AK-47 rifle on himself and died at the scene of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Again, a very dynamic scene involving a mother and an adult child. So it has a domestic undertone to it. And then you have random acts of violence of people that James Davis III did not know and did not have contact prior to the shooting. Again, I want to recognize the great work done, particularly by the rescue squad that arrived on scene. We had two people that were eventually transported to Central Maine Medical Center for non-life-threatening injuries. And then the great work that first responders did in securing that scene, securing the crime scene, and shutting down the roadway. Tremendous amount of work to do. This happened in a very short period of time. And then the major crimes unit from the state police arrived shortly after that, maybe an hour or so after that, and they were on scene till about 2:30 in the morning. They're back at it today, tracking things down. Working with the medical examiner's office and the attorney general's office as is part of the protocol. Again, long night, very devastating to the community, particularly when you have anyone that's killed, and unfortunate and certainly unnecessary. At this point in time, I'll come back to answer some questions, but I'd like to give Chief McGee the opportunity to come up to the podium and take you through what some of the first responders were doing. And once he's concluded with that, we'll be more than happy to come back and answer some questions. One important thing I want to add is we're right now continuing to look into this. And we've looked into the Maine State Police Records Management System. We have not found any contact with James Davis III. And we're going to continue to look into the local agencies to see if they have had contact with James Davis III, the shooter in this incident, to see what prior contact is there and the context of that contact. As more information becomes available, we're going to get it out to you because I'm sure that's something you want to know about. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to Chief McGee.
Thank you, Colonel. Good afternoon. My name is Ryan McGee, Chief of Police of Lisbon. First, my heart goes out to everybody that was involved in this incident and all the families and victims. Yesterday afternoon, the call came in as a potential active shooter, and our agency, as well as the Innisquam County Sheriff's Office and the Sabattus Police Department, responded immediately, and all resources were sent to the scene to assist. Lisbon Fire, Sabattus Fire, Lisbon Emergency, Innisquam County Sheriff's Office, Innisquam Sheriff's Office, Lisbon Police Department. We all were dispatched simultaneously, and in any incident like this, or any large incident, we always try to get everybody responding into staging areas Officers did a great job as they showed up on scene. As you can imagine, this scene was over a couple hundred yards on a roadway at an intersection as well where it started. When officers arrived, first and foremost is life and safety and securing the scene, and that's essentially what the officers and supervisors did on the scene. They did a very good job of securing it relatively quickly and getting the roads shut down with the assistance of the fire departments as well, and Lisbon Emergency as well as Sabattus Fire, and I believe United as well, did an excellent job doing everything they could for the victims of the scene. As you can imagine, again, this was over a couple hundred yards, so several different vehicles. Basically, we set up a command post pretty much immediately. Started documenting everything. That way our partners with the state police could get all the information when they showed up to start gathering facts. That evening, we were notified that evening, obviously, one of the females, which was Catherine Williams, that she was transported to the hospital and she ended up passing at the hospital. So furthermore, the two other victims, as the colonel said, were also transported by Lisbon Emergency, and they're at the hospital. Just to back up, as far as the police response part of it, I'm very proud of the Androscoggin County Sheriff's Office, my own agency, Lisbon Police Department, and Sabattus Police Department. For a situation coming into this magnitude, they did a great job, and we never know when these first come in exactly what we're going into, and they went into it to immediately try to stop the threat. And this individual ended up, unbeknownst to us until we got there, had taken his own life. Furthermore, speaking about the suspect, James Davis, the Lisbon Police Department, we have never dealt with this individual. We don't have him in our system. This is the first interaction with this individual. Pretty much it went into the evening hours, and we just assisted with marking out anything during the daylight. That way when the state police showed up, they had all the evidence that we could see marked out, and names of individuals, witnesses, anything that we could gather that could be pertinent to this case. That way they could have an effective investigation. We just tried to assist state police. And I also want to say that the Maine State Police Major Crimes Unit, they did an outstanding job, very professional, very compassionate, and they handled the situation very well. So thank you.
Any questions?
You mentioned the mother that was called to sort of was the one to calm him down. Do we know what may have set him off? Any history of mental illness? What do we know about that from the family?
Bill?
What we know from interviewing family members is that he was definitely in some type of mental health crisis that day. But in terms of some longer-term medical issues involving mental health, they weren't indicating that that was present. To what extent and how prolonged his episode was, that is not clear right now. But based on interviews we've done with the family, it doesn't appear that this is something that has been around for a while.
The guns he had, was any attempt made to take the guns away, or I guess it was never a court filing, but did the family try to take his, think about taking his guns away at all?
From what we know today, he had those guns when he arrived at the father's house yesterday morning. He had them with them all day. He had them when he got into his father's truck and then got into his mother's truck. And based on interviews we've had, I don't believe there was any discussion of removing those firearms or calling the police.
Someone who's acting erratically, though, do you feel like that's an indication that maybe we should?
It'd be a good time to call the police.
Were they guns that he had possessed for a long period of time, or were these guns that he may have purchased recently?
He has several firearms. Again, the investigators went to the residence and recovered more firearms at the house. We're tracking down all of those serial numbers, and we'll be able to have more definitive information as this investigation continues.
How did he get to his father's house? Did he drive himself, or was he driven?
I believe he was driven by his mother in the morning.
Okay. And he was a functioning, normal adult. He was 29, but he was living with his mother. Was this a caretaking situation in any sense? I know you said there wasn't a history of mental health struggle, but Was it just a
He
living
was
life?
29, living with his mother, didn't have a driver's license, and I think his work history was sporadic based on interviews with family members. And that's really all we have. Doesn't appear to be someone who really went outside the area or worked outside the area. So someone very localized to Sabattus over a long period of time, most of his life.
Was there any possible history of drug use or anything of that sort?
That's something we're still looking at right now. Obviously, there will be an autopsy to determine if any of that's present. The question was about drug usage, and the autopsy should be able to determine if there's anything on board.
We had a case in Yarmouth where they, after a deadly shooting, they shot strangers as well in Yarmouth. What does that say about why do people do that? And from your training, what do you know about people who target just strangers after doing something?
And that's one of the things that we do, is try and be as thorough as we can, because when you have random acts of violence, you really need to vet that out, and that is truly a random act of violence. Is there any connection between the shooter and the last 3 people that were shot? And right now, we don't believe that there is any connection with them. And that isn't that common. This wasn't like a robbery or something, a crime of in the moment. This was something that you don't see very often, even though we saw it in Bowdoin just not too long ago in Maine, but it is uncommon.
Did they think he was on drugs at all?
To be determined. We haven't found any, and the family didn't indicate that he was on any.
A witness told me that it appeared other cars had stopped thinking that this car got in an accident. They were trying to help, and all of a sudden someone's fired. Were there other people, not including the 2 men in the trucks and the woman that ended up getting shot? Were there other people who escaped his firing?
Yeah, good question. No one else that we know of, no other vehicles that we know of that were hit. Obviously, depending on how many rounds are shot, and once we get to the bottom all of that, no one has come forward that said that they had received any injuries or any damage to their vehicles. But that's a busy area, busy time of day. People are coming home from work. You can only imagine what you're rolling into. What you might think is a traffic accident because there's several vehicles off the road, and it turned out to be anything but a traffic accident.
A witness told me that he believed he heard the contents of a single clip. Does that seem accurate?
Can you describe that again?
That what he heard was like 10 shots for a single clip.
I think that was consistent with what you saw what we saw at the scene when we were processing it. Sure.
Do you know if it was 10? Because we've heard variations. We've heard 10 to 15.
We'll get exact numbers out once we're done processing the scene and things are processed at the crime lab. You have to know how many rounds were in a magazine and what's in the chamber and all that stuff. And our evidence response team's going through all of that stuff now, plus all the other firearms that were recovered. So in due time, I think we'll have that information for you.
Would 10 to 15 be a safe reporting number?
For shots that were fired, I think that it's going to be probably close to something like that, but an exact number I'm not going to commit to right now.
Was the location of King Street and Route 9 have any significance to the shooter, or was it just a random location that it happened?
It's close to the father's residence, and it's not too far from where the mother lives either. It looks like they were going back to the mother's house. We don't know that for certain, but that would be one of the ways they would go, depending on where they met up on Birchwood Drive. You're basically just looping right back around to that T intersection where King Street hits Route 9.
So just when things happen to
Yeah.
bubble over in the
That's the neighborhood, and what made him act at that moment, we won't know.
I think you mentioned, but I want to verify, Kay Williams, the innocent woman in the truck or car, who was struck, and her car continued on. We did see a White House, which appeared another vehicle was hit. I assume her vehicle was taken away and there was a hole in the house. Was she hit? Where was she hit? And how much distance between where she got hit and this house where she crashed?
I think multiple times the vehicle was hit. I think it was struck 4 times, and in multiple places of the vehicle. You can imagine the person shooting and a car's driving by, and she was struck and died from those injuries.
were these guns registered in his name, and how did he get access to these, and how long ago did he buy them?
We're getting into all of that now, and we'll have that information for you shortly. He had a lot of firearms, and he had firearms back at his house as well, and we're going through all of that.
In the house where Mrs. Williams' car landed, we saw, like my reporter was saying, a damaged, I think SUV or a minivan, and plus a blue tarp over top would look to be a hole. Was that the house where Mrs. Williams' car landed?
That would be consistent with what we were dealing with, yes.
Do you have the address for that house?
I don't have that. It's right on Route 9, just in from King Street.
Anything
We
else?
can get that for you, though.
Is there any, like, security cameras or footage that you've been able to?
All that we're looking at, and with everybody carrying a cell phone today, we'd certainly be interested if anyone had any footage of looking at someone's cell phone. This happened really quick, but if someone was there, we would like to speak to them, and certainly if they had any video footage. Typically, we will look for those types of things when we're processing scenes.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.